Offensive miscues, defensive success. How did it all happen for the Bills and their loss to the Eagles? I'm going to break it all down for you today on Locked On Bills.
You are Locked On Bills, your daily Buffalo Bills podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's up, Bills Mafia? It's Joe Marino, author of the Herd Mentality Substack, co-host of the Locked On NFL Scouting Podcast, co-host of the NFL First Read Podcast, and I'm your host of Locked On Bills. Locked On Bills is a proud part of the Locked On Podcast Network, now the #1 sports podcast network. I want to thank you for making Locked On Bills your first listen every day, and a big welcome and shout out to our everydayers. You know who you are. Those of you who never miss a single episode, I appreciate y'all being here very, very much. Well, folks, welcome in. I've taken the time to study the ALL-22 coaches film from the Bills' 13-12 loss to the Eagles, and I want to share my top takeaways with you on this episode. We'll do studs and duds. We'll talk snap counts. We'll recap my keys. We'll talk about the dominant defensive performance and how that happened. But I want to start with my thoughts on the Bills' offense and the passing offense, where Josh Allen went 23 for 35, 262 passing yards, no touchdowns, no interceptions. The Eagles played the exact coverages you would expect them to play. A lot of zone match. It was exactly how you would expect. And I think there was some good and there were some bad. And I want to start with the good because it felt like in this game, the traditional drop back passing moments were pretty strong when throwing to wide receivers in ways that we really haven't seen in a while. You saw regular drop back passes and Josh Allen work a route combination designed for wide receivers down the field. It's not something we've seen a ton of this year. And there were a couple of nice outbreaking patterns to Brandin Cooks, one to Khalil Shakir. Just good rhythm throws. Josh Allen with a 3-step drop, a good route from the receiver breaking towards the sideline. Josh Allen hits him in stride. You get a nice gain. You saw Josh Allen do a similar type thing, hitting Josh Palmer on a dig route over the middle of the field. It's beautiful to see that, right? There was something about seeing it that made me feel good because those types of plays just haven't been there. And so to see some traditional drop back passing work was nice. It was also nice to see success with deep throws. And whenever we say deep throws, we mean 20 yards or more down the field. Josh Allen in this game, 3 of 4 on deep throws for 118 yards. The only one that was incomplete, you had a great chance to complete it. And Josh Allen had Brandin Cooks open down the field. And Josh was a little bit long on the throw, and Brandin Cooks was expecting it over his inside shoulder. Josh kind of put it on his outside shoulder with a little bit too much distance on the ball, but another available opportunity, and that's nice to see. I don't think I've seen a single receiver for the Bills do what Cooks has done over the last few games in terms of presenting a consistently available target down the field. And, of course, the drops were frustrating prior to this game, but, as they've played together a little bit, maybe that led to a lot better results in this game where Brandin Cooks goes over 100 receiving yards. So, yeah, I liked some of the traditional drop back passing. I liked seeing successful deep throws. Now, there was plenty of bad to go with it, and I want to start with Josh Allen being sacked 5 times, now sacked 40 times on the season. That's hard to reconcile. I wouldn't have guessed he would have touched 40 sacks this year, but that's what happened. So I want to explain to you what I saw on those 5 sacks that he took. The first one, Dion, Dawkins, and David Edwards are not able to handle a stunt on the left side of the offensive line, and Josh Allen gets sacked. And it's disappointing because if the protection holds up, the Bills had Ty Johnson lined up as kind of a wing on that play, and he runs a fade route, and he's open down the field, but the protection doesn't hold up to give Josh a chance to throw that ball. So why couldn't they handle that exchange? Well, it's because Dion Dawkins, the way he set on that play. You know, Dion's a unique player. He lines up much more forward, to the ball than a lot of tackles do. Most tackles want to get a lot of depth. And for Dion, that's okay because normally he'll vertical set and get some depth with his set. But he 45-degree setted it. And because of that, him and David Edwards are on the same level, and you can't really work an exchange there. Dawkins had to get more depth with his set. And because he didn't, it made it impossible for them to pass that off to each other. Josh Allen takes a sack despite Ty Johnson getting open down the field. Number 2 is just an egregious play by Josh Allen, where it's the play where he fumbles, and it's a naked rollout to a wide open Jackson Hawes. It's 2nd and 2. He's wide open. You just throw the ball. It's not a hard decision. And, it's a half field read with 3 levels to it. You can't, there's nothing to hunt. There's no big play to hunt. I mean, you just got to take that and get the first down. Of course, Josh Allen doesn't take it and winds up fumbling on the play. The 3rd sack, Jalen Carter just completely beats Osiris Torrance, who took a bad set. He wasn't able to frame Jalen Carter. Jalen Carter bull rushes him, works half a man, softens the edge, and, cleans up Josh Allen. Where Osiris Torrance has to be better is, get your hands placed. And, he was wide with his hands. He was late with his hands, and Jalen Carter was able to get right into the half of his body, work him back, and there was no chance for him to recover because he didn't have leverage, didn't have his hands placed. Josh Allen gets sacked. The 4th sack, it's a 1st and 10 play. The Bills are empty. It's a 3-by-2. To the right is Cooks and Palmer, and Josh Allen works to that side first, and it's kind of a messy look where they're kind of wanting Palmer to set a pick and for Cooks to get open, but there's off coverage, so that never really happens. And Josh goes to the other side of the field to consider the options over there, but by the time that happens, Moro Ajomo beats David Edwards, and Josh Allen takes the sack. And then 3rd and 8, it's a bunch set, and he has 3 to his right. Josh Allen wants to work this combination of routes where, they're kind of clouding the middle of the field, and you're going to have an outbreaker and a sit route, and, you're kind of hoping maybe for some rubs along the way. There was never a point in the play where it ever had a chance of uncovering. They smothered it. They're trying to get Khalil Shakir on an outbreaker, but Cooper DeJean, was all over the play. And Josh really just keeps his eyes there for way longer than necessary. If he gets to his check down, Ty Johnson is wide open for a dump down. And instead, Josh Allen loses 19 yards on a sack where it's, 3rd and 8 from the 27-yard line. If just throw the ball to Ty Johnson, you're going to get a first down, maybe a whole lot more. If you just take an incomplete pass, then you're maybe in a go for it situation. Instead, you lose 19 yards and you have to punt after being at the 27-yard line. So, with football, I hope if there's anything you've learned from me is that it's never one thing that you can point to. It's always a combination of things. And so whether it was Josh Allen's decision-making, offensive line issues, you had problems here that led to Josh Allen getting sacked 5 times in this game. So I think that's where you would start the bad with the passing offense, but you also had drops. Khalil Shakir on a 3rd down, short yardage play, catch and run. He doesn't catch the ball. Would have been a first, I'm sure of it. And then there's the Josh Palmer drop. And looking back on it on the All-22, I actually have a level of grace for Josh Palmer. Josh Allen does an amazing job shrugging off Zach Bond. And he's kind of rushing to get the ball off, and he never really gets a good grip on the ball, and he throws a wobbler to Palmer, and Palmer has to reach back across his body. And it's a contested situation. I would argue maybe it wasn't a drop because, if you're going to charge someone with a drop, then, it's got to be like an error in baseball where we're talking about a play common to the game. Like if it's a contested situation, it's hard to really say that it was a drop, but certainly a ball you'd like to see Palmer come up with. But you did have a couple of drops. And then real quick on the 2-point play, of course, Josh Allen misses the throw, but I think there's some elements here that were revealing to me when watching that back. First of all, and I'm no expert on, setting protections and what goes into like who calls it and which way it's supposed to go. But I think you can make a case that it needed to slide the other direction because to Josh Allen's right, things get really, really messy. And they have 3 for 3. They have Ray Davis of course, Torrance and Brown for 3 players, but it gets messy, and Josh has to kind of move to his left to get away from that, and that affects his sequencing, and obviously you get an inaccurate throw. What I will say about that throw is, you can't leave it wide and short. You had a ton of space. You just get some air on the ball and let Shakir figure it out. There's no real threat of anybody that's going to make a play on the ball. But if you watch it from the tight angle on the all-22, you will see that there's a linebacker that's kind of in that throwing window. And I can understand why Josh wanted to push the ball left a little bit, but what you needed to do is push it up a little bit and just give him some air to fall under the ball. There wasn't a defender within 8 yards of him, so just get some air on the ball, make an accurate throw, win a football game. And we got to have different conversations, right? Do you ever think about just the margins of these games? Josh Allen makes that throw, right? And the Bills win that game. All of a sudden, this is a gutsy performance. Josh is playing with a hurt foot, defensive masterclass and figuring it out and overcoming some issues there. Can't get out of their own way, but they figure it out against the defending Super Bowl champions in the rain, right? Instead, we don't get that conversation, right? We get the execution errors, and is this team ready to go in the playoffs? And I think it's a warranted conversation, but the margins are very slim from what you ultimately talk about compared to sometimes what you could be talking about. All right, we got plenty of more to do. We'll talk about the rushing offense and all the rest of our offensive discussion here on the other side of it. So, folks, please be sure to stick with me. Let's be real. No one starts a business for the joy of calculating tax withholdings or managing payroll spreadsheets. That's where Gusto comes in, to take the stress out of payroll, benefits, and HR so you can focus on running your business and supporting your team. Gusto is the all-in-one, remote-friendly payroll and HR platform that makes managing your team simple, transparent, and fast. Whether you're hiring, onboarding, or paying employees, Gusto helps you do it all from one place without the hassle or hidden fees. You're going to get unlimited payroll runs for one monthly price, which means no surprise charges at the end of the month. And Gusto's automated tools like offer letters, onboarding materials, and direct deposits save you hours every week. And knowing that you can reach certified HR experts at any time is going to give you that real peace of mind. So try Gusto today at gusto.com/LockedOnNFL and get 3 months free when you run your first payroll. That's right, 3 months of free payroll at gusto.com/LockedOnNFL. One more time, that's gusto.com/LockedOnNFL. All right, folks, welcome back. Let's keep talking about this Bills offense that obviously was overall disappointing. They scored 12 points and couldn't get a win at home when the defense held them to 13. Running the ball, not a great day, right? Not a great day for the Bills running the ball. 33 rushes, 120 yards. They were stuffed on 53% of runs, which is very high for the Bills. In fact, that was the 6th highest stuff rate of any rushing offense in Week 17. The gap runs just weren't there. They ran gap runs, 10 gap runs for 25 yards, and they just couldn't get the push up front. They couldn't get missed tackles either. Only 2 missed tackles forced on 33 runs by the Bills. And I think you give the Eagles a lot of credit for their front, but mostly I think they're like the spine of their defense. Their linebackers, their slot corner, and their safety. Zach Bond and Jihad Campbell are big, athletic, long football players that are very good tacklers. Cooper DeJean is a guy that's a heat-seeking missile from the slot defending the run. Reed Blankenship from depth is outstanding coming downhill and making tackles. Marcus Epps, same thing. He did a great job filling from depth. And so, their front was pretty sound, but I thought their back seven, really that spine, linebackers, slot corner, safeties, I thought they were terrific with how they triggered and tackled. And I will say this, I wish the Bills' rushing scheme in this game was more intentional about attacking the edges of the defense. The Bills ran the ball 33 times. 25 of those were between the tackles runs. And I thought that was where they were most vulnerable. The metrics support what I have to say about that going into this game. They're a little bit lighter on the edge. They have very good players in the spine of that defense. I wanted to make them work laterally. And the Bills were not as interested in that as I was. And then you also, you're not running the ball well with gap runs, and you only get Reggie Gilliam on the field for 6 rushing snaps. Feels like that was maybe a missed opportunity to find some type of rhythm, right? There wasn't a concept running the ball in this game that really just found consistent success. And usually the Bills can find that, and they can spam it, and they can dress it up different ways, but just continue to run it and find success. They never found that signature formula running the ball in this game. So just a very modest day running the football. Let's recap my keys. As a reminder, this is something I've added recently, where if you are an everydayer, you know that I do a primer episode where I work really hard to give keys for the Bills on offense and defense. And so I want to kind of reflect on those in these all-22 reviews. I had 3 keys for the Bills offense. Number 1 was protect Josh Allen. Well, no, they didn't do that, did they? Not good enough. You can't get sacked 5 times. I think he's pressured on like 36% of dropbacks, which isn't a crazy high amount, but ultimately, Josh Allen wasn't kept clean in this game to the level that I hoped. I didn't expect it to be perfect, but even Josh got the ball out really quick. I think it was under 2.4 seconds, his average time to throw. He went to his first read like 71%. Those are crazy high numbers for Josh Allen. He usually goes to his first read like in the low 50%. His average time to throw is usually around 2.7. So he got the ball out faster to his first read, and you still had as many protection issues as you had. It's not great. Number 2, my number 2 key was attack the edges in the run game. They didn't do that. Only 7 of 33 runs were outside the tackles. And number 3, as I said, the Bills needed to focus on play action in this game. The Eagles were 4th most yards per play in the league on play action. They were 7th worst in defensive EPA against play action. The Bills came in with with play action on 12 of 24 dropbacks. It's right at 29%. 7 of 10 Josh Allen was for 93 yards. So it was a normal amount of play action. I wouldn't call it an aggressive amount of play action. But maybe, Josh's foot was maybe something they wanted to be mindful of. And certainly the protection issues probably didn't welcome the idea of getting his back to the defense that often. Let's talk about some offensive snap counts. And at the end of this, I want to talk a little bit about Dion Dawkins and Ray Davis. The Bills offense was on the field for 76 snaps. Josh Allen played all 76. At running back, James Cook played 39, Ty Johnson 29, Ray Davis 10, Reggie Gilliam 7. At tight end, Dawson Knox 48, Jackson Hawes 21, Kalecki Letu 16, and Alec Anderson 2. He was on the field, Alec Anderson, for a couple of goal line plays, including the first tush-push touchdown. At wide receiver, Khalil Shakir 59, Tyrell Shavers 43. He had a great game. Obviously made a couple of catches, but did some good work blocking as well. And of course, special teams. Tyrell Shavers is just such a useful football player. Brandin Cooks, 39 snaps. Joshua Palmer, 38. Gabe Davis, 29. I think this is – I wish the Bills were a little bit more defined here. You have 5 different receivers that played between 29 and 59 snaps. I just kind of feel like that might be difficult for guys to truly get in a rhythm. And, I think some of the variance that we're seeing in the passing game is rooted in it's week 17 and you don't have this figured out. And not necessarily even to the point where, you have your top 3 guys in 11 personnel. These are your dudes. I can understand being, specific to certain looks and things that you want to get done. But just the fact that they can't get the mix of guys that they want to dress for any particular game. I think it takes away from some rhythm stuff, and I think it's catching up to the Bills. Then the offensive line, Dawkins, Edwards, McGovern, Edwards, they played every snap, and then Spencer Brown played 74 snaps. He missed 2 after Jalen Carter tried to poke his eyeball out. I want to talk about Dion Dawkins because I thought he had 3 discernible blunders in this game, and he's going to be a dud for me. I just expect more. This is a Pro Bowl left tackle, leader on this team. Some of these issues just can't happen. And I think Dion's having a down year. I've already talked about the first sack where he didn't get enough depth in his set, which made it impossible for that stunt to be exchanged. Josh Allen had a 3rd down run. It was a good looking run. It was a designed run. He converted and it looked like he was going to, maybe get a bunch more yards, but Dion Dawkins doesn't finish his block on that play. And his guy is the one that runs Josh Allen down from behind. Allen might score on that play if Dion finishes the play and isn't lazy. And then he also had a hold that took away a nice run from James Cook. And really, it's definitely a hold, but it's just lazy technique. The defensive end that he winds up holding is lined up outside his shoulder, outside his left shoulder. All Dion Dawkins has to do is move his feet and wall him off. Well, because he's slow with his feet and doesn't get his hands placed, he has to hold, and you get, it's a 10-yard loss instead of a very positive run for James Cook. 3 discernible blunders that I think are like, there's nothing to debate. Those are problems. Not to mention the Michael Badgley blocked extra point, where I think you can extend criticism for Dion Dawkins for being late with his hands and allowing too much penetration there and not allowing Osiris Torrance to work to that inside gap if you watch that playback. So I don't know. I thought those were some disappointing moments, and I think they continue to mount for Dion Dawkins this year. One comment I want to make about Ray Davis as the kick returner. There's been a couple of plays over the last few games where Ray Davis doesn't field the ball. It lands in the landing zone. And if it lands in the landing zone and rolls into the end zone and it's a touchback, the drive starts at the 20. It's like an amazing play for a kickoff team if you can pull that off. A consequence to the Bills' new style of kick return, where it's only one kick returner back with Reggie Gilliam as the, kind of the lead blocker, you don't have two back there. So Ray Davis is in the middle, and he's got to go half the field one way, half the field the other. If you have two, right, then you're going to be in a position where you can field every kick return. And so teams have been able to really just take advantage of that a few times. And if Ray Davis can't get to the ball, well, then they get the ball at the 20. And so that's the trade-off for having the one kick returner. And Ray Davis isn't making a mistake. It's literally impossible for him to get to the ball every time that it's rolled in. And so keep that in mind as we consider the success that he's having returning kicks, but also those moments where, in this NFL, if you're starting drives at the 20, that's a long field. So something to be mindful of there as we consider the direction of the kick return team. All right, let's talk about the defense in segment 3. Obviously, a ton of great things to discuss. I love the Bills' pass rush plan, and I love what they did to help their front against the run. I'll tell you all about it here next. Folks, be sure to stick with me. This episode is brought to you by PrizePicks. Whether you're starting a new routine or jumping into player projections for the first time, trying something new can feel like a challenge, but with PrizePicks, it always feels good to be right. With all these high pressure football matchups every weekend and elite hoops action almost every night, the action never slows down, and PrizePicks lets you stay in control. PrizePicks is the daily fantasy app that makes watching sports even more exciting by letting you build lineups based on player projections. There's no drafts, there's no waiting. Just pick more or less and play your way. Getting started on PrizePicks is quick and simple. The app's super easy to navigate, and it's going to make watching games more engaging, especially when following individual player performances. I love the flexibility with options like Flex Play, where you can still get paid even if one pick misses, and the new early payouts feature is a game changer. If a player starts hot, you can cash out before the game ends. So check it out. Download the PrizePicks app today and use code LOCKEDONNFL to get $50 on lineups after you play your first $5 lineup. That's code LOCKEDONNFL to get $50 on lineups after your first $5 lineup. PrizePicks, it's good to be right. All right, folks, welcome back. Let's talk about this defense here the rest of the way, and certainly an outstanding performance from this group. And we'll focus first on the rushing defense, where the Bills limited Philly to 82 yards on 26 carries. The Bills' defense had the 7th highest stuff rate in the NFL this week. They had 0 missed tackles against the run. That's huge. And what I thought the Bills did that made them wildly successful defending the run and overcoming, what they didn't have up front. No Daquan Jones, right? You're leaning into Phi Mathis and Larry Ogunjobi and TJ Sanders and Deion Walker. They did a ton of gap exchanges. especially on the right side of the offense where Tyler Steen's at right guard and then Fred Johnson's the backup right tackle. He stepped in there and he's a depth player. Those are their worst two players on that offensive line. And the Bills kept them in conflict with gap exchanges. And so what is a gap exchange? Well, it's that. It's a single gap defense, and you could look at an alignment and say, okay, this guy's supposed to be in this gap, this guy's supposed to be in this gap. But instead of that, clear understanding, you have a switch. So, for example, there was a play where Phi Mathis and Shaq Thompson were exchanging gaps where Phi Mathis was aligned in one gap. He goes to a different gap, and then the linebacker fills the other gap. And it puts the offensive line in conflict because they're expecting it to look a certain way. And then that picture changes on them. And all of a sudden, they're kind of like their timing is off. And now you have guys in the backfield and the running back's track is affected. And, the Bills were able to get a lot of negative plays off of this. I would guess like at least 5 different negative plays that they were able to generate because they executed really good gap exchanges and it messed with the blocking. And then it puts Saquon Barkley in a position where his track isn't what he thinks it's going to be. He stops his feet. You get to the football, you make plays. And so you saw just literally 5 or 6 of those plays that allowed the Bills to just, hey, you don't have to beat a block, right? You don't have to go one-on-one and, stack the block and get off the block and make a play. We're just going to have you stunt, right? And we're going to put you in a position to make a play. And so you might be thinking, well, we'll do that all the time, right? Well, the challenge is if you're wrong or you do it and, the guys don't exchange the gaps, now you can very easily get creased. So there's definitely a risk reward. But I think in this type of game where you have respectfully a very indecisive running back in Saquon Barkley, I've said that since the first time I ever watched him at Penn State. He's unbelievably physically dynamic, but he's not a very consistent player in terms of decision-making and vision. He's just not. So you have an indecisive runner in Saquon Barkley. You have a right side that, has a backup right tackle, and Tyler Steen, that's the weak link, right? He's not a tomato can, but he's not a very good player. And so you had that combination, and that's where you go and you stress those opportunities. And so I thought the Bills did a nice job of doing that. And certainly I think you tip your hat to a lot of players up front. Guys like Phi Mathis, guys like Andre Jones, Dion Walker, TJ Sanders, Larry Ogunjobi. These guys really elevated their play. And I think that the scheme helped them, but I think you tip their hats as well because I thought they did a good job handling it in ways that I never thought would happen. And so they created chaos. That's what they did. They created chaos with run stunts. Barkley stops his feet, get population to the football, and you handle it. I thought the Bills up front handled double teams better in this game. Double teams have been killing the Bills this year. And what I thought it really came down to was guys being willing to just muck it up. It's probably not fun to have 700 pounds of dudes trying to push you out of the way, but you can't just continue to just get worked off the ball. You have to muck it up at some point. And so I thought Phi Mathis in particular, TJ Sanders sometimes, if you just drop a knee, if you're giving ground, just drop a knee. It's way better to drop a knee, create a pile, than to just keep getting blasted off the line. And you saw the Bills defensive linemen have a real willingness to do that. I put a lot of this in the film clips. So if you're part of our Substack community or our subtext community, you got a file already today. I sent you an email or a text message that has this file where it's over 40 minutes of me breaking down these plays. I'm showing you gap exchanges. I'm showing you protection issues. I'm showing you, bad decisions by Josh Allen and talking it over through the ALL-22 film. So would love for you to get that as well. Don't miss out. You can join the Substack or the Subtext. Either one gets you a ton of extra content. If you join the Herd Mentality Substack, you're going to get extra written and film content from me every single week. And if you're part of our Subtext, well, then you're going to get text messages from me pretty much every day where I send out my first reaction to all Bills news. I keep you updated. You don't have to scroll Twitter all day long to know what's going on with the Bills. I'm going to send it right to your cell phone with some quick thoughts about it. You get my in-game text, but also you get these files of this film so you can see exactly what I'm talking about. So check it out, thejoemarino.com. You can join the Subtext or the Substack and get in on this. Plus, it gets you in the Discord channel. Got over 2,000 Bills fans in there talking Bills. A big organized group chat, having fun. we've been debating the fumble all day today in there and sharing a lot of thoughts. And so check that out as an incentive for joining either. Again, thejoemarino.com will get you plugged into those opportunities. The Bills' pass defense was tremendous in this game. Jalen Hurts goes 13 of 27 for 110 yards. Didn't complete a pass in the second half. I mean, it's just an unbelievable job by the Bills' defense. I thought they were really good in terms of marrying the rush with the coverage. The Bills were sticky in man coverage, and they were able to get a lot of heat on Jalen Hurts. And the Bills dialed up the blitz. They dialed up man coverage. 38% man coverage rate. That's the second highest rate of any team in Week 17. They had a 37% blitz rate. That's significantly higher. The Bills are kind of like a 20% blitz team. They go to 37% in this game. And look, I mean, you gotta heat up Jalen Hurts, even if it means blitzing. He's not the type of quarterback that's going to kill you just because you blitz. I hope that you can watch this game and then foil that against a game like the Super Bowl and just realize that he's a confusing player. Like, the highs are really good, but you're lying to yourself if you don't feel like every play for Jalen Hurts is on the cusp of being a disaster. Like, it doesn't look like he's in control a lot of times, and he just has very low lows as well. And you saw him in this game. He's a very confusing player. If anyone's got him figured out, let me know, because there's some games where you're like, oh my goodness, this guy's unreal. And there's games like this where you're like, can he find a completion? He's tough. He's tough to figure out, but he was very vulnerable in this game. And really, like, some of the production he did have was highly annoying. The play that to A.J. Brown that got him down to score their only touchdown of the game, very clear push off. When A.J. Brown is executing that route break against Christian Benford, he absolutely pushes off and uses that to get separation. And obviously Benford is kind of like frozen because he's pushed off, and then Brown uses that momentum to run across the field. Now, bad job by Cole Bishop on that play. He's got to stay leveraged over top. He overcommits one way, and you got a lot of problems there. But between that push off and Dion Walker absolutely getting held on that play, should have never happened. And then there was the other nice play that he had rolling to his right, a sideline throw to A.J. Brown. That window that ball just like went through is crazy. Cam Lewis's hand was right there. Like, it went through his arm, and A.J. Brown caught it in like the tightest of windows you could ever imagine. So, like, even some of their best moments were kind of goofy. I thought the Bills did a masterful job with their rush and involving everybody. Of course, your down lineman, but Matt Milano had 3 pressures in this game. Dorian Williams had 2. Terrell Bernard had 3. And so those 3 linebackers had 8 combined pressures in 14 combined rushes. Taron Johnson had a pressure. Cam Lewis had a pressure. Shaq Thompson had a pressure. That's 3 pressures. They had 4 combined rushes. So from Milano, Dorian Williams, Terrell Bernard, Taron Johnson, Cam Lewis, Shaq Thompson, you got 11 pressures in 18 combined rushes. So I thought they did a really good job of involving linebackers, slot corners, safeties in the rush plan to get after Jalen Hurts. And obviously Jalen Hurts, 13 of 27, didn't complete a pass in the second half. He's a guy that if you can affect his process, it can get dicey for him. And really, incomplete pass after incomplete pass after incomplete pass. My keys for the Bills defense in this game, number 1 was to find ways to generate pressure. They certainly did that. 41% pressure rate, had a pressure rate over expectation of 12.5%. That's crazy high for the Bills, 8th best of any team in Week 17. Number 2, we talked about getting population to Saquon Barkley and getting him to stop his feet behind the line of scrimmage. Masterful job. Absolutely masterful job by the Bills on that. And then number 3, I just talked about matchups. And I said I kind of like how the Bills match up with their skill players. I was obviously concerned about the Bills' front against the offensive line, but I said, look, A.J. Brown, that's a kind of the type of receiver that Christian Benford has success against. Talked about Devonta Smith and how, Trey White and Maxwell Harrison, like, pretty decent matchup. Talked about Dallas Goedert and how the Bills had allowed the fewest catches in the league to tight ends. And, Milano and Bishop handled that really, really well. And so those matchups played out really well. And the Bills obviously, cherry on top with how they were able to affect Jalen Hurts and overcome, their lack of just organic four-man pass rush with their front. Defensive snap counts, the Bills played 54 snaps of defense. Greg Rousseau at defensive end, 34 of those snaps. Joey Bosa, 30. AJ Epinesa, 26. Andre Jones, 16. And a hat tip to Andre Jones. This is 2 games in a row where I think he's helped this defense. And so I know people are interested in seeing Matthew Judon, but I think Andre Jones maybe has done more in the last 2 games than Matthew Judon has done in the last 3 years. So I'm interested in more Andre Jones. At D tackle, TJ Sanders, 35 snaps. I think he's continuing to make strides. Had some really good reps in this game. Dion Walker, 31 snaps in this game. Had some very disruptive moments. Phi Mathis, 18 snaps, clearly his best game of the year. I wasn't sure he was playable. And then this game really, he elevated for sure. Larry Agunjobi, 17 snaps. I thought he looked probably the best he has all year after being inactive last week as a healthy scratch. At linebacker, Matt Milano, 53 snaps. He was unreal. It was as good of a Matt Milano game as I've ever seen. Flying around, rushing, filling from the backside, coverage plays. He did it all. He was awesome. Shaq Thompson, 32 snaps. Terrell Bernard, 27. Dorian Williams, 17. At corner, Christian Benford, 54 snaps. I thought he played a great game, except for the touchdown is on him. I don't know what he was thinking. He's got to carry Dallas Goedert there, and for some reason, he closed in on the other tight end that was covered by Maxwell Hairston. That's a blunder there from Benford, but I thought he was terrific otherwise. Trey White, 32 snaps. He was terrific. Maxwell Hairston, 22 snaps. He was terrific. And Taron Johnson, 40 snaps. And I thought this was one of Taron's better games, to be honest with you, as a run defender, and, even made a couple plays in coverage. At safety, Cole Bishop, 54 snaps. Solid game. He did have that one blunder on the deep throw to A.J. Brown. Cam Lewis, 54 snaps. And Darnell Savage played 1 snap, but I don't really remember what it was. So when I went and looked at the snap counts afterwards, I was surprised to see that Darnell Savage played 1 snap. So I'll have to go back and see what that is. It might have been like the kneel down at the end of the game or something like that. Studs and duds, got a few of each. Studs this week, Brandin Cooks. I mean, obviously, this guy was terrific in this game. Tyrell Shavers, terrific in this game. Matt Milano was awesome. And Phi Mathis, I mean, big time step forward in this game for Phi Mathis. Duds, Josh Allen. And look, I know that you can say, well, the only reason they had a chance in the game was because of Josh Allen. Yeah, in a game like that, though, the mistakes were just too much. We talked about that in my initial reaction where, the negative plays, the backbreaking mistakes offensively, Josh Allen he committed them. And so, yeah, he did a lot of good, but more bad than good. And it hurt the team. Dion Dawkins, dud. Michael Badgley, dud. And he's gone. The Bills released him. Sean McDermott said that it looks like Matt Prater is online to return this week. All right, real quick, Bill Squad, we're going to roll with that Tuesday, December 30th at 1 p.m. Eastern time. So that's when you can catch the next episode of Bill Squad live on YouTube. Again, Tuesday, December 30th, 1 p.m. Eastern time. And then when we're done, it'll post as a podcast and then, of course, live on YouTube. So that's coming your way on Tuesday. And then, of course, we'll get to herd mentality. We'll start focusing in on the Jets and, some of the big picture stuff that might come out this week, depending on what we hear from Sean McDermott about the intent for playing starters and those types of things. So all the coverage you can imagine coming your way this week as we get ready for Bills Jets and then, of course, the playoffs. So don't miss anything. Make sure that you're subscribed. Would love it if you took a second to rate, review, and share the podcast. Have a great rest of your day. Go Bills. And I look forward to catching up with you again real soon.